By the end of this video, you will see why stress can shake you more deeply as an HSP, and how the very trait that makes it harder also helps you clear it faster. In this video, you'll discover why stress builds faster in highly sensitive nervous systems compared to other people. What makes highly sensitive people uniquely equipped to process and release stress once they have the right support, and how to work with your sensitivity so stress moves through you instead of lingering. As highly sensitive people, we have a unique relationship with stress. On the one hand, we get stressed more easily than other people. But on the other hand, when given the right tools and the right environment, we actually do better at processing stress than others. So let's look at this in more detail here. And the first place I'd like to look at is why stress builds faster for the highly sensitive nervous system. As HSPs, we process more input at once. We take in more sensory and emotional data, more tone, more facial expressions, more subtext, more environmental detail. So your brain is not just tracking what happened, it is tracking what it might mean. This means your nervous system is actually doing more work. If two people walk into the same tense meeting, one might register, "Oh, that was awkward," and an HSP might register tone shifts, posture changes, micro reactions, what was left unsaid, and the potential long-term impact. This is what it means to process things deeply, which is what the HSP trait is one of the main characteristics of the HSP trait. But the thing is, this kind of depth of processing is metabolically expensive. It takes energy and takes work for us to do that. And so it's easy for us to get stressed more quickly than other people. Another factor is that as HSPs, we react earlier. We detect subtle changes sooner, and so a small shift in someone's tone, or a slight edge in their voice, or a subtle look of disappointment shows up on our radar more quickly. Someone else may not even notice this, but for you, your body may respond immediately. And your stress response activates earlier because of this. Your detection threshold is basically lower, so you pick up on things, imbalances in the environment or in your own life quicker. It's like a smoke alarm that detects smoke before any flames are even there. This is protective, and this is our role as HSPs. That's why evolutionarily, this trait of being highly sensitive has been maintained not only in humans, but they've looked at over 100 different species. And it's always about 15 to 20% of the population has this high sensitivity. It's very helpful because it alerts the whole community to danger. But it means that stress affects us more quickly. Another factor is that we integrate emotion deeply. Stress is not just an event for us. It is an internal experience. We don't just skim over it. We try to integrate it. And our systems want coherence. We look for meaning. That is part of being an HSP. We look for meaning, for resolution, for coherence. And until that resolution happens, the nervous system can stay activated. And that's why stress can linger with highly sensitive people. We're trying to process it, trying to make sense of it, trying to find a way out of it. And that is our nature. Another factor is that we track relational safety. That means relations between other people. And so stress for us is not just about workload or noise. It's about relational harmony. And so if that gets strained, then our bodies read that as danger. And because relationships matter deeply to us, then relational disruption carries more weight. So you may not just be stressed about a task at work, you may be stressed about what the task means for connection and belonging and trust and all kinds of relational issues. These are all factors that make us respond to stressful situations in a much more amplified way than other people. Another factor is that our system, as highly sensitive people, was not designed for overriding it, like kind of just not paying attention. And in modern culture, everyone is rewarded for pushing through any kind of internal signals. Just push through. No pain, no gain. Just go for it. And HSPs are designed to stop when that happens, to actually say, whoa, something is wrong here. I'm not pushing through anywhere. And so that is something that we can't put up with. We can't long-term override these systems. And so we feel the cost of stress much faster. We notice it, we're tuned into it, and we may even have other consequences for stopping what we're doing to attend to the buildup of stress. And this can also complicate. But the thing is, because we clue into stress sooner and because we care about it, we're also motivated to resolve it sooner. And that's where the healing speed comes in, which is the other side of this coin. The very thing that makes us experience stress more, get overwhelmed more quickly, and have issues when environments are not supportive, that very same sensitivity is what allows us to actually become more resilient in a way than other people. It allows us to get completely healed from stressful situations, stressful things going on in our lives, and find resolutions that last. This is a unique thing because of the very same sensitivity that brings stress to our doorstep. And so why is it that we tend to do well in healing stress, even though we get triggered more quickly into stress? First of all, we process things deeply. And this means that we don't just skim our experiences, we try to metabolize them. And when you have the right container for this, with good place for reflection, and there's safety there, and maybe some guidance and inner work, then you're able to integrate insight more fully because of this depth of processing that comes with sensitivity. We are able to learn from emotional experiences. So it's not just like, oh, that's too bad, or that sucked. It's like, whoa, okay, what happened there? What was really happening? And then what can I learn from that? And then how can I find, once I understand it, how to not have that happen again? This is our gift in a way. Also, our ability to process deeply helps us reorganize our internal story at a very deep level. So we're willing to do the inner rearrangement, inner work that actually can make us become very resilient, more resilient than others because of this. Many people suppress stress. That's their way of dealing with it. They just suppress it, ignore it, distract from it. But we as HSPs tend to process it because there's no ignoring it. You can't ignore it. When you're this sensitive, you can't ignore stress. And so that means we have to deal with it. Sounds like a curse, but that is a serious blessing because it means that we are going to deal with it. And given the right tools and ability to do so, we actually are going to come out of the woods and we're going to be able to handle situations that others may not be able to handle. Once something is truly processed, it often clears completely or permanently. Another reason why sensitivity is our ally here is that we respond strongly to positive input. This is where the research on differential susceptibility comes in. Researchers such as Michael Plewis and Jay Belsky have shown that people high in sensitivity are not just more reactive to negative environments, they're also more responsive to positive ones. This is called differential susceptibility. They're susceptible to the negative environments and they're susceptible to the positive environments. So highly sensitive people are more affected by adversity, but also more transformed by support. In neutral or stressful conditions, sensitivity can look like vulnerability, but in supportive conditions, it looks like accelerated growth. And I watch that with my clients all the time. I work exclusively with highly sensitive people. And once we start doing inner work that really addresses the roots of where they're suffering, their ability to transform and move into a whole new way of being is very quick. So this is the advantage of being highly sensitive. The same nervous system that registers stress intensely also registers safety intensely. And when you experience genuine emotional validation, or a calm and regulated presence, or a clear relational repair, or effective inner work, or some kind of consistent structure, then your system does not just feel slightly better, it can reorganize very quickly and adjust to that very powerfully so that it can take full advantage of that situation. Another reason why being highly sensitive helps us in healing is that we are very highly attuned to internal shifts. Many HSPs notice subtle changes in their own body and their mind. Just you can tell the difference when there's a small exhale or a slight release in the jaw, or when a new perspective clicks into place. And that awareness allows you to course correct earlier. So you notice when something feels off and you can course correct. You can also notice when things start feeling right, and you can use that as information to guide you. When you learn tools that match your nervous system, that lead you back to yourself, then you don't need extreme interventions. Small adjustments can create huge shifts for highly sensitive people. And finally, we are meaning makers as HSPs. So stress often lingers when it feels chaotic or senseless, and highly sensitive people naturally seek coherence. So when you make meaning out of an experience, not a forced meaning, but actually integrated understanding, then your system settles. And it's like closing an open loop. And that depth of processing, when guided instead of anxious, becomes a force for healing. Also, as highly sensitive people, we don't like to override ourselves. Many people, as we mentioned earlier, tend to numb or distract or push through, whereas HSPs tend to feel when something is unresolved, and that discomfort becomes a motivation. And when given healthy tools, that same intensity can become a momentum towards clarity. So differential susceptibility research shows something really powerful, that sensitivity is not a weakness trait, it is a responsiveness trait. You are more responsive to stress, and you're also more responsive to support, which means when you are in the wrong environment, stress accumulates quickly. When you're in the right environment, healing accelerates quickly. The key is not becoming less sensitive. It is creating conditions where your nervous system can thrive. And this is where the very trait that once felt like a liability becomes your greatest advantage. So how do you work with your sensitivity so that stress moves through you instead of lingering? I'm just going to give an overview, but there are 3 pillars of stress management for highly sensitive people. The first one is understanding yourself, understanding the HSP trait, understanding that it's normal, that there's nothing that needs to be fixed. When you understand your limitations, then you can live within those limitations, and that's when you're going to experience balance. Limitations are there for a reason, and once you accept them, then you can move within those limitations very easily. It's like there's a limitation for driving a car on a road. But if you don't pay attention to that limitation, you try to go off the road, especially if it's very rough, then you're going to run into a lot of problems unless you have a special car that can handle that. And so but once you know that you have to stay on the road, you can go anywhere that the roads go, which is almost anywhere. So limitations are not usually as big of a problem as we tend to think they are. We just have to accept them for what they are, then work within those limitations. And along with those limitations come a lot of advantages for being highly sensitive. So it's something to study, it's something to learn about, and that can bring a lot of peace already. The second pillar of stress management for highly sensitive people is outer balance. Setting up a lifestyle that will support you instead of drain you, that will cause you to thrive instead of becoming more and more stressful. And that means setting up containers for sensitivity. The analogy I like to use is the one of a candle. And if you just leave it out in the air, then it will burn very quickly because of the wind. But if you put it in a little container with a glass around it, then it can burn much longer because the wind isn't buffeting it and causing the wax to run down so quickly. So there are lots of ways that you can create these kind of containers to support your sensitivity. And as you find these, then you can build a more and more supportive lifestyle for yourself. And then the third area, the third pillar of stress management for highly sensitive people is inner work. And this is where you look at the emotions, look at the stressful thinking, the beliefs, the reactions, and you see what's actually going on. And then if you have tools like the work of Byron Katie or other kinds of support to really go deeply and to not just understand what's going on, but allow the experience to shift in a real way. I always say I'm doing the work when I'm working with my clients or working with myself. I'm doing the work with the slowest part of me, that little childish part of me that is stuck and crying and upset. I'm asking the questions of it, and I'm letting it answer, and I'm letting it develop and grow and become, have more insight. And so this kind of inner work is what can transform negative situations into perfectly acceptable situations, things that you can still work with just fine. When you take all of these three together, that's when stress becomes less and less of a factor, because you have the tools at your disposal to deal with stress, to prevent stress, to accept your own limitations, and to actually process stress whenever it does occur. In this episode, we looked at why stress builds faster in highly sensitive nervous systems compared to other people. And it's simply because of this sensitivity. When you're sensitive, you notice stress earlier and you process it more deeply. And this is what causes us to have more reaction than others with stress. We also looked at what makes highly sensitive people uniquely equipped to process and release stress once they have the right support. And again, it's that depth of processing that allows us to go deeply into the healing direction just as quickly as it went deeply into the stress direction. Given the right tools, we as highly sensitive people can really get the benefit of those tools. And finally, we looked at how to work with your sensitivity so stress moves through you instead of lingering. And we touched on the three pillars of stress management, which are understanding the HSP trait and doing the outer work necessary to protect that sensitivity and doing the inner work necessary to really learn how to process and to actually process the emotions that can bog us down. So the feeling I'm left with today is that being sensitive has its disadvantages, but also its advantages. We may get stressed more quickly, but we also have the capability to completely heal from and learn how to avoid pitfalls that others continue to fall into again and again.